Hello, second graders. Oops, let's see, we're going to talk about wedges today. And wedges, this is our second simple machine we've learned about. Last week we learned about inclined planes. And today we're going to learn about wedges. And all simple machines make work easier. All right, so wedges are two inclined planes put together. Wedges have a wide end. So here's the wide end of the inclined plane. And they also have a thin, sharp end or edge here. Wedges are used to split, cut, and separate objects. Wedges are also used to lift objects, like you imagine a shovel lifting the snow in a snowstorm with a shovel is a wedge. And also to keep things from moving, like a door stop. It's one of those triangular wedge-shaped things that we put in, kind of shove into the bottom of a door to keep the door open. It's easier, it takes less force to split, cut, and separate objects using wedges. All right, so we're going to read from this story. It's called Cut, Chop, and Stop, a book about wedges. Timber! A huge tree crashes to the forest floor. Was it hit by lightning, cut down by a chainsaw, or pushed over by a bulldozer? What could have been strong enough to cut down such a big tree? A wedge, that's what. And there's the wedge, also known as an axe. What is a wedge? A wedge is a simple machine. A simple machine is anything that helps people do work. Work can mean lifting heavy loads or cutting objects into smaller pieces. Wedges help people cut, chop, and slice. Wedges hold things together. Wedges split things apart. Wedges help us move easily and smoothly. Wedges make things stand still. Wedges are amazing, simple machines. Ooh, and here's a wedge on this big ship here. You can see the edge there, the sharp edge. Wedges can be big or small. The front end of a boat or ocean liner is a wedge shape. The sharp edge cuts easily through the heavy waves, helping the ship sail more smoothly. So it kind of cuts through. So here's that wedge shape. Chisels are a kind of wedge. A chisel is used to scoop, poke, and puncture. As a chisel is struck by a small hammer, it digs and slices into wood, plaster, or stone. Woodworkers use chisels to carve designs into heavy blocks of wood. Sculptors use special stone chisels to shape statues and to carve decorations on buildings. All right, so maybe we've learned about chisels in art class with Miss Tuma. So chisels are another kind of wedge. Flat end, pointed end. Take a piece of wood. Now grab a hammer and a nail. Of course, you would ask your parents first. Place the sharp end of the nail against the wood. Carefully hit the flat end of the nail, called the head, with the hammer. The nail goes easily into the wood. Flying wedges. Airplanes and rockets use wedges to cut through the air. The nose cone on an aircraft is a rounded wedge. So here's the rounded wedge. A wedge moves easily and smoothly through the air. So just like how that big boat earlier kind of cut through the water, the nose of an airplane sort of cuts through the air. A wedge can make things stop as well as move. It can keep wheels from rolling, or it can fit under a door. So here is a wedge that's keeping this airplane from moving. As the object pushes against the slanted edge of the wedge, it also pushes against the floor. The wedge stops the object from moving. So there's our door stop. The wedge shape, it kind of gets wedged in there. It's a verb. Special shape. A wedge is a special shape. A wedge has at least one slanted side that comes to a sharp edge. Lots of food comes in the shape of a wedge. I wonder why so many food items are in the shape of a wedge. Think about when you eat a piece of pizza. Which part do you usually eat first? Or when you eat a sandwich and it's cut into a wedge shape like this, I know sometimes my kids, if we cut a sandwich into a wedge shape like this, and they take a bite right in the middle here, and then they get peanut butter and jelly all over their face. And we think, well, why don't you bite the corner? Don't make such a mess. Or a piece of pie. Usually we kind of like to cut off that end part. It helps it. It's kind of easier when we're picking food up that we put sort of the corner into our mouth. So wedge shapes are helpful for eating too. Wedges are very helpful, simple machines, and sometimes they are yummy too. Ooh, I want to take a bite of this wedge, this watermelon wedge. All right, so this is just an activity that you might want to do at home. It is quite a simple thing to do. You just get a couple of books and you put a piece of paper here, and you see the difference between using the flat edge of a pencil or the wedge edge of the end of the pencil to see which one is easier to cut through the paper. So you can go ahead and pause the video if you'd like to try this experiment at home. These are just some fun facts about wedges. One of the oldest tools in the world is an axe, and an axe is a wedge. So some wedges that scientists have found are thousands of years old. We have learned about friction, and friction is the force that makes one object rub and stick to another one. Doorstops use friction to stick to the floor and not move. So sometimes friction can be helpful. And some wedges have slightly rounded pointed ends. Nails, pins, and needles are all wedges. Some ships use special wedges to cut through thick sea ice. Ooh. And some chisels are also called gouges. To gouge means to dig or scoop out. All right, and this is just a little bit more information from a different book that talks about wedges in history. So people have used wedges for thousands of years. In ancient Egypt, there were bronze wedges that were used to break off blocks of rock to use for buildings. American Indians often used obsidian. Oh, we know about obsidian. Looks like black glass, to make axes and arrowheads. And early farmers dug their fields with wooden or metal plows pulled by farm animals. The plow is a kind of wedge that is dragged through the soil to loosen it. So it kind of wedges into the soil and kind of brings up the dirt and loosens the soil. All right, and here's a little bit more information about wedges through time. You can feel free to pause the video if you'd like to read a little bit about that. A couple more wedges that we have in the world. Ooh, we know about this kind of a wedge, a snowplow, and we have those in Minnesota, don't we? Another wedge that all of you have, it's right in your mouth. Your teeth are wedges. So you have kind of a wide end that goes up into your gums. That's the wide end. And then the sharper, thin edge is this part where you bite. So that's kind of neat. Helps us to bite through things like apples and other harder foods. All right. Here's a little bit more history. Here we have that chisel again that artists use. And some incredible works of art have been used or have been made with chisels. And if we were in the classroom, we would take some notes about wedges. So wedges are two inclined planes put together. And wedges take a push and send that in opposite directions. So like if a wedge was used to cut a piece of wood, it kind of goes down into the wood and then it goes out because the wedge is a kind of like a triangle shape. And wedges are used to split, cut, separate objects, to lift objects, and to keep or stop objects from moving. Here are a few examples. There's our axe is a wedge shape. A knife is a wedge. An arrow is a wedge. Oh, and here it shows kind of these two inclined planes coming together, and there's a doorstop. And a couple other examples, a bulldozer. There's the wedge part. So kind of looks like also like a snow plow, has this kind of a shape on the front. A razor. So this is someone shaving their face, and a razor has a wedge shape to it. Scissors. Now these have wedges on the sharp end where the paper cuts. And there's another wedge, and this one is kind of a pickaxe, so kind of like a chisel. All right, so to review, wedges are two inclined planes put together. They have a wide end and a thin end, used to split, cut, and separate objects. They are used to lift objects, like a shovel is used to lift snow and keep things from moving. And it is easier, it takes less force to split,